2, 1. Welcome, Sat Shri Akal, to the Love, Laugh, Live chat show with the beautiful Devinder Ubi and myself, Gurdial Garcha.
So, Pyar Karo Hasote Jug Jugdiyo Wala show. So, this show is all about, how we love with passion, how we love with pleasure, and how we live with peace.
So, Pyar Karo Sare Dil de Naal, Haso Dil Par Ke, Ta Jiyo Shaant de Naal.
So, my name is Devinder Ruby. I'm a life and spiritual coach, and sitting next to me is my beautiful co-host.
And my name is Gurdial Garcha, and I'm an empowerment and resilience coach. So, Dav, what are we going to be discussing today?
So, actually, we're going to continue from last week's episode, which we were discussing about love. Pyar, Mohabbat, Ishq is all about state of God's love. And because talking about the love, it's so vast, and we feel like we need a few more episodes because we can go on forever and ever, because love is eternal. There's no beginning, no end. So there's so many different ways we can talk about love. And
and also because one show just wouldn't do it justice.
Exactly. So true, so true. So we can probably have maybe another couple of episodes on this, on topic about love. So today we're going to say, what is love? Love, Kia, what is it?
Pyar Kia. Mohabbat Ishq.
Yeah. So in our interpretation, we're going to explain it from what we experience love to be, and from the knowledge and awareness that we have. So is love an emotion, or something that goes beyond emotions and permeates throughout the universe? So how do you feel about that when I say that?
I think love's one of those things that, if we look back, people just die for it. Do you know what I mean? It can get you into that kind of state. So for me, God is unconditional love. Yeah. For me, that's like the biggest thing for me. Yeah. And then, love is a state. It's about the way we feel. And yes, there's an element of the emotions and that side of things. But we're going to talk about more about that. Yeah. There's no beginning, there's no end. And, Ikonkar is the infinite, internal energy that resides in anything and everything.
Yeah, so we're going to discuss a little bit more about this. So I believe, in my understanding, that it is above and beyond emotions. Because if you think of emotions, it's not there constant. It comes and goes. Yeah. But asi pyar de love di gal karde hain, it's always there. It's eternal. It never goes. So I think emotions are just us humans having a different way of experiencing different types of emotions. It's just the love experiencing itself, having experience through different emotions. So I don't believe love is really, at the core, is an emotion. I feel it's just a state. And we can talk about state. I mean, what is state? That we can be in a state of panic, we can be in a state of anxiety, we can be in a state of lack. There's all these different states, and all related to this type of frequency, because again, what are we at our core essence with this energy, this takat, this force, and it's a state. And so, but this state is, I believe, like another way you can say love, is with the absence of judgment. It's just everything and omnipresent without beginning or end. So we're going to keep mentioning that throughout the whole program. And so the state is obviously like, I'm in a state right now, so let's see, what state are you in right now?
I think doing these programs, just before we come here, there's a state of a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of worry. So that's the state. But then when we're here, we kind of just go with the flow. So it's just like a calm, accepting state. So that's what I would say, that where I am right now.
Yeah, so this love, this energy, this takat, it's allowing itself to experience itself to different states, but without judgment. So I can be in a state of, oh my God, I've got so much to do, in like overwhelmed state, and have been through that because all this stuff we're going through this past few weeks. So that's the state to be in. But like I said, the love resides in all the states we're in. We can be in a anxiety state, we can be in a cushy state, we can be in any sort of state, or even the lack state. But it's just the love experiencing itself through all the states. And but like I said, the state, we only be in that state depending on ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਧਿਆਨ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, ਕਿੱਥੇ ਅਸੀਂ focus ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, and then we become that state and start experiencing it.
Yeah, I think when we were explaining state, sometimes it can come across as, well, I'm not really sure what that means. And I understand what you're saying. It's about the frequency. It's how we're feeling within our core. And sometimes it's about recognizing, well, how am I feeling? What state? You know, and that sort of goes about your mental state, your physical state. How am I feeling right now? And again, like you've just said, it's about not judging it. It's about accepting it, because if we think about love from a God perspective, it's unconditional. God doesn't judge us for the way we feel, the way we act, what we do, whether we're in a state of like feeling like we're falling in love, or we're in a state of not feeling great about ourselves, because God doesn't judge us. The judgment comes from us. We are the people that put meaning onto everything that's happening in our lives. But if we're thinking about unconditional love, which is there is nothing but that state, that is what we're kind of alluding to when we're talking about state.
So coming back to frequency and energy, so I feel like when I'm really in that God state, like in that powerful God state, it's like that could be like I'm in a state of abundance, I'm in a state of prosperity, I'm in a state of just feeling content, feeling complete, feeling whole. This is when we have, like, for me, that's like mera apna darshan ho gaya, because I'm in that same vibration. But you can be in a state of lack, you can be in a state of fear or worry, despair. I'm not saying that it's not wrong, you know, it's not bad, it's just that it's a different state. But we were trying to say that Rab Ochvi Vastaya, because from that state we need a duality, we need something to see the contrast. Like if I'm in that place of despair, then I really appreciate when I'm back in the state of feeling grateful. So we need all those states to really appreciate the bigger God state, you know, of like just feeling complete and whole and omnipresent within ourselves and everything. So these states are all perfect, depends where we are in our lives. And like I said, Rab is an omnipresent energy, so it exists in all the states. But sometimes we panic, we go into a sort of like panic mode when we're in the lower states. We think, I don't want to be there.
But again, which is what we were discussing earlier today, and this is the bit that I was struggling with when Dav explains it in such a beautiful way, that no matter what state you're in, that's perfect for you at that time in your life. Because if you are in a lower state or a lower vibration or frequency, that's where we can choose to grow. We can either stay stuck and think, well, you know what, this is just my life, this is the way things have got to be, and you know, I'm a victim. Or we can decide that we want to change that state, which is a conscious awareness. You know, and we want to change that, and we want to feel good about life. And so that's when sometimes, you know, people talk about being grateful, because that's a state of thinking, and it is a comparison when you're thinking about, well, I'm still in a better place than most of the people. So it's all about thinking about where you are in comparison to where you could be, but it's also about growth. I feel like that's the most important thing if you're in a lower state, because if you're in what I would class as a God state, and we will talk a lot more about God state, because this might be something that very few of us have even come across, you know, because we don't say God state, do we? So if you were to say to me, and I'll explain to you what I think of God state, then I think hopefully our audience will understand what God state means.
And as you do opposite, you share your opinion, as you see, so much.
It's brilliant, because we're just learning so much, and that's what keeps us going with what we're doing.
So when I was saying what is love today, because that's our topic today, so, you know, is this love emotional, or does it go beyond, you know, the emotions and permeate? So what we kind of say, you can still be in the God state, even when you're in the lower vibration. So because
the lower vibration, let's just explain, is when you're feeling insecure, when you're feeling anger, scared,
worried,
any of the negative emotions that we associate life with.
When you're feeling hurt and sad, and you know, all these lower vibrations. And especially when you're doubting and you're feeling guilt or shame, it started, you know, these are the lower vibrations.
Low self-worth.
Yes, all of those. And when you say we're not good enough, we suddenly dropped our vibration. But then we're trying to say the God state. It's like I said, it's not an emotion, it's a state we allow ourselves to be into, depending on what we choose in that moment, what we're going to focus on. So let's say we're in the lower state today and you're feeling like doubtful or feeling like insecure about, let's say, whether I'm going to get my job or not.
Yeah, I mean, the real thing we could use as an example is sometimes when we're doing this show, we think, what are we doing? How are we helping? But when we're together, all of a sudden our frequency changes and we go into a higher state.
But they only change because we decided to change our thinking
yeah,
about
because
it.
we talked about it.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to say. The God state exists. Doesn't matter what vibration you're in, but we need the low vibration. We need those doubts and all those opposite, or what we call opposite of love.
It's duality.
Yeah,
isn't it?
and like you said, we need to grow from it. So, like जब हम बच्चे पढ़ते हैं छोटी उम्र तो they don't just stay in that primary school. They have to have a test before they go on to this, and they go into the secondary school, then they have to go to college and university. You have to work at it and you have to go through those different challenges and tests. So Sadhvir challenges test on the when we're in the low state and low vibration. So those are necessary to we refer to grow and upgrade ourselves and become a better version every time. And so those are all God states.
I was just thinking about what you just said about the child, and I watched this clip, and it was this child. It was I won't say where from, but she was crying so much because she was studying so hard, but part of her wanted to play, so she needed to be able to experience that in order to continue with the work that she was doing. So those are states that she felt that at that moment in her life, right there and then, she wanted to experience the joy of life and not just focus on her studies. And I think sometimes we forget the importance of the playfulness of life and having a joke, having a laugh, and because as much as work and all the normal things that we have to do or we feel we have to do, that is such an important element of life that as we grow up, we do tend to kind of think is not as important, but we know how important
very
it is.
Important, very important. So, so give another example, like something happened and I felt really hurt and felt betrayed. So I'm gone into that very low vibration, low state of feeling a victim. So now, how do I get my God state in that place I'm in? So the God state this is where the lesson comes, like, okay, what is it in me that attracted this? So what is it in me that I can change within myself? Because the inner work, I need to focus on, there's an element of maybe I need to go into forgiveness. Maybe this is where I need to go into self-compassion and change my story. So this is now the God state is helping me to, that's what I labeled it as a very bad and horrific experience I had, but now I'm changing my story around it and putting it into a different state. I'm just changing the vibration frequency of it by just allowing myself to grow from this and change the whole meaning around that whole experience, thinking, this came to me, I attracted this because this is teaching me the virtue of I'm going to forgive myself, because something in me believes that I wasn't worthy of being loved or being trusted on, or something, it could be that on that basis. So that's bringing the God state into that low vibration.
And I totally understand, because we all go through those lower emotions regularly, and I think it's so important that we check in with ourselves, and that's what you're talking about.
Check
because
in all the time.
What most people will do is distract themselves, and we've got so many distractions, and we talked about this. So we don't check in with ourselves, we don't want to be self-aware and think, well, why is this happening? So then that same issue will keep coming to us until we do address it. And that's what we're talking about. It's that conscious awareness of not only why am I attracting this, because it's part of who we are that we're not willing to look at.
Exactly. And so like another example, we're not out of our comfort zone. As becoming into this entertainment industry, there's so much we're learning, and we make mistakes. But in that moment we made the mistake, the moment we might go into the lower state. But how do we bring the God state into that? We laugh. We have, we find a difficult situation and we find the humor in it. And then we have such a good giggle, don't we, afterwards? And we sort of like act it out and pretend. And so this is how we deal with a challenging situation. We find, the funniness in it.
Yeah, and it maybe if we were doing this on our own, we wouldn't be able to like work through it really quickly and think, like kind of say, oh my God, how did I do that? Why did I do that? There's times when you might be talking and think, I was just saying something that was totally, not really that I should have said. That's the best way I can put it. And then you think, I've just made a complete fool of myself. But then when you talk about it and you say, well, actually, it's part of life, we have to be, we talk about helping other people to be kind to themselves, self-compassionate, but then it's important for us to do that for ourselves. So it's always easy to give other people advice, and we're all, we all do it because we want other people to be kind to themselves, but we forget that we also need to extend that compassion, kindness, caring to ourselves, and that's the most important thing. And I think, because we forget.
We do,
and we all feel embarrassed when we make a mistake. That's the biggest thing.
And it's natural because, like you said, the God state is omnipresent. There's no beginning, no end. So it's going to keep expanding. But how does this universe energy expand? It expands through us. Because we're spiritual beings having this human experience. So we expand through our challenges. Once we've actually allowed ourselves to change our story and change our perspective to a higher perspective of what Bella we perceived it as something thinking from a narrow-minded way, and now we're seeing the bigger picture, we've certainly had an upgrade, and it changes our vibration. Every time we go into a place of forgiveness, self-love, self-compassion, unconditional love, in that challenging situation, we just had a sudden upgrade and it changes our frequency. And then, the God state just, expands even more. And this is how the universal energy, it keeps growing and growing. And it doesn't matter, we're coaches or whatever, we're still going to have our challenges because till our last breath, we're here, the God state energy is going to keep expanding and growing. So, but it's I think, how to master this skill is the more challenges we have, the more we allow ourselves to quickly get out of that, the low vibration.
And we understand that sometimes that can be easy, it can be hard, depending on the people around you, because sometimes you may not have people who are going to support you the way we kind of help each other out of difficult situations. And it can be easy, but some people can really, really be affected by whatever their challenges are. But again, I think for me and for both of us, it's always about, what is this teaching me? What am I learning from this situation? What can I do? Because a lot of the times we can't change the situation because that's happened or it's happening. But it's the meaning, it's constantly the meaning that we put onto it. And sometimes we'll say, why is this always happening to me? Well, we could rephrase that and say something like, why is this happening for me? How is this helping me to grow as a person? And not many of us are willing to do that because it's easier to be in the mindset of, I really don't like that person because that person treats me in this kind of way. So that's going into the low vibrations and just becoming a victim rather than thinking, well, what can I do to change and help to be compassionate, kind, loving towards myself? So it's all about the individual challenges and how big they are or small. Because to some people, a small thing can become massive.
Oh yeah. It's because the reason why the small thing becomes such a massive thing because you keep focusing on it, they keep dwelling on that same story and ruminating on it.
And then adding more to it.
Just constantly ruminating on it. But we humans have a tendency, like we just think our life should be on this steady line. That's no good because we're here to grow and expand through our challenges. So we need that wobbly bit. But it depends there in that wobbly bit how long we stay there, because we only stay there when we allow ourselves to be in that victim state, and then we go into suffering. Suffering is self-inflicted because we're just dwelling on feeling that everybody's out there to get us, life is unfair, and then we think that we're not being treated nicely and it's not safe to exist on this planet or in this life form. So, but then the ones that come up quickly because they've actually understood, like you just said, this is not happening to me, this is happening for me. Why is it happening for me? And once and sometimes you just have to ask the question. If you don't know, you just say, you know what, God, whoever you want to talk to, why is this happening for me? What is there for me to learn from this? Because as soon as you've asked that question, you will get an answer. You don't know where it's going to come, but the answer will come. And when the answer comes, you'll realize, actually, if this wobbly bit didn't happen to me, it wouldn't allow me to change my thinking, where maybe I needed to be, maybe I'm not meant to be in that job. Maybe I needed to learn to stand up for myself. Maybe I needed to get out of the relationship where I knew I wasn't truly happy in. So sometimes that wobbly bit is always à défaire de there. But once we've taken that lesson, instead of going back to the way we were, we'll actually go, whoo, right up again. And we have that feeling of, oh, God, life is so wonderful. I don't know why, I just feel so confident. I've my self-esteem badgi. I just feel like I can deal with any issue. And then we're there for a little bit, and then we come back in the steady bit, life's all right. And then, whoop, we've got another wobbly bit. That wobbly bit is the best part of why we're here.
Although at the time, we're not going to feel like, all of our challenges are great. We're not going to understand that this is here to teach us something. And I was just going to mention that when we, as human beings, naturally at the beginning, we will blame other people for any problems that we have in our life. Because the way I interpret it is, it's a get out clause. It's a way of saying, well, you've caused this problem, it's your fault, so therefore we're not taking any responsibility. And it's only when we start to take responsibility and also understand that whoever's doing this or has done this, and yes, we've attracted it in whichever way, because that is part of our learning on this infinite journey that we're on, but it's also understanding that that person is only doing this because this is about the way we feel about ourselves anyway. And that's why it's caused that trigger, that sense of helplessness or worthlessness, even though deep down we've always been told in every religion that we are this infinite force of God's source, of God's state, and that's unconditional love. And we kind of forget that because we get into the world of what's happening around us, and we're going to go into that a little bit.
It's interesting also, like, some people say, well, why have I attracted this? I'm such a nice person. I'm always there for everyone. I love everyone. But why are they treating me like that? It's okay, because we need here to grow and expand. We might think that we're doing everything, but on a subconscious level, there's something there that we believe about ourselves. And it could be something like, I really need to try harder to make people like me, otherwise they won't like me. There's something, a program running that's attracting that to you. And at the same time, there's many saints, spiritual teachers have walked this planet. They've had challenges. So if they are so highly evolved, from Buddha and all that, Christ and Jesus, they've had to experience challenges. They're there showing that challenges that are, right? Even it could be the nicest, the most purest person, you still get those challenges. The reason, because we are this state. So what is love? Love is this state that keeps expanding and growing. So it doesn't matter if you're a saint or a sinner or whatever, we are going to have these challenges because we are going to expand in this universal force energy, but we're just expanding through, because we're human species, through human challenges.
Going back to what we just said about, whatever the situation is, whatever challenge, and this is one I feel that comes up a lot, where parents might think, I love my children so much, but now they're just busy getting on with their own lives, and they're not bothered about me, they don't care about me, they don't love me, they don't spend time with me. But then for me, I feel like now is your opportunity to really look at what you enjoy doing. Because what we're doing when we're kind of thinking like that, there's an expectation of them making us happy, for us to feel loved. But if we love who we are as a God state, then we don't need to depend on other people because we're whole as human beings. And yes, we need the connection, we need to be able to see each other and do it in that way. But there's also an element of, well, now it's your time to do what you enjoy, go out, make new friends, have new hobbies. And that is where, the growth comes in, because there's an element of, especially our generation, that other people are going to make us happy. We're indebted to them, so we've got to be there for them whenever they want us, but we want the same back, and that's where the suffering comes in. Because for me, now as a grandparent, I want to be able to still have my own life, doing the things that we love doing, but also be part of the family, but also be doing what I want to do. And I know that must be difficult for people who put so much of their attention on the family and think that they're going to provide me with everything I need. So therefore I don't have to actually think about anything. But maybe this is your important role now, for you to grow more into being the person that you would have liked to have been, rather than just somebody that's going to be there just for the kids. This is what you're saying, constantly feeling like you're doing so much for other people and they're not reciprocating that. So then that becomes a bit like a sodda, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a contract. That's not love, it's condition based.
And that's what we're going to talk about, aren't we? About conditional love.
So we talked a little bit about the state of love, what it means to us. It is omnipresent, it exists everywhere. We need to experience the duality, we need the low, to experience the high. So it's like so that lifeline you see, the ECG up and different things.
Unconditional love.
So we've got to experience all the spectrum of different emotions. And so, but we're going to discuss about how we interpret and think love means in human connection.
I mean, the most obvious example is always, it's got to be Valentine's Day, or birthday presents, or Christmas presents, or Mother's Day, Father's Day, all those sort of the days that have been put into the calendar where there's an expectation.
Even booking your wedding. Wedding, your dates, you have an element, a big element of an expectation that I'm only going to feel safe and secure with this person if they, obviously they attend all my needs and they're doing what I want, that I can feel happy and loved. So most of it's very conditioned. So if they can tick these boxes for me, then I'm happy in this relationship. Then I feel loved. Otherwise, even this one box is not ticked, then I can say, well, I don't feel like love is complete enough for me. See, that's conditioned. And like we think that we need to change someone in order to feel happy in ourselves. We can't change anyone.
And this is what we were talking about, that when we came into the world, we were whole, and as we grow up, we will always remain, whole. But there's this thing that when I meet somebody, they are going to complete me. Well, no, you're already whole. But sometimes through life's challenges, through life's traumas, or whatever, culturally we've been led to believe what love is, and hearts and flowers and things like that. If we don't get those things,
it's the movies we watch.
Exactly. All of those things influence.
The Disney movies, Snow White, all them, Cinderella. We think that I'm only going to be happy once my Prince Charming
knight in shining armor
comes, and then I can feel the love. But that's what we've been conditioned and programmed.
Exactly. And then if this doesn't happen, if my partner doesn't do all of these things for me, then I don't feel loved. But really, we talked about this earlier, we are complete, but we've got to work on ourselves, and that's where the issue comes from, because we want someone else to complete that bit that we're not willing to work on for ourselves. That makes sense, doesn't it?
It does.
Where the trauma is and things like that. We want them to make us feel good, because we just think that's the answer. But really, the answer is, why am I feeling hurt? Why am I feeling angry? Not because of what he or she's done, but because of where is all this coming from? And that's where the real work needs to take place.
And it's funny that terminology, that statement when we say, I've fallen in love. Fallen in love, because remember, so words are very powerful. So why do you want to fall in love? Why can't we rise in love? I think a true relationship, that the other person, obviously you have to, when you're feeling complete and whole in yourself, the other person is just a bonus. They actually feel you've risen in love. And how you risen in love? Because you're not dependent on them. You're not expecting that they have to behave in a certain way that I can experience love, on a deeper level. No, you are love. And when you're in this state, God's state, then you have not fallen in love. You have actually risen in love. And the other person, all they're doing is validating, is that that you already are whole and complete.
And how you feel about yourself.
And there's no condition on it, and you're allowing the other person just to be themselves. You're not expecting them to change, because you're already in that God state. You are risen in love. And then that sort of relationship, I would call it like a very spiritual relationship, when you understand the other person is only there reflecting back to your state. What state are you in? Are you in the state of feeling not good enough, not lovable? Because if you're in a state of feeling not lovable, and maybe that happened, or it definitely would have happened, they say, well, your mom and dad weren't there, they didn't say I love you, they maybe told you off when you wanted them to nurture you, hold you, and they said, oh, I'm too tired, little child will feel they don't love me. They love the other person because they went and hugged them and didn't hug me. It could be something so simple like that. And a child could feel, I'm not loved, the other one's more loved, the new baby's loved more. So the child's already programmed that I'm not lovable. So instantly, when they grow older, then that starts functioning out, that belief, that program throughout all their relationships. When as soon as a person suddenly just missed a message or didn't text back, oh, they don't love me.
And there's that expectation, isn't it, of an instant response. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who kind of think, well, they're on Facebook. I can see them on Facebook. They're on, you know, I can see them online on WhatsApp, but they're not responding to me. So automatically, their state may be good at the beginning of a conversation, but because that person's not interacting right at that moment, then all of a sudden their emotions drop. So they've gone into a lower frequency. But so much can depend on how other people treat you. But if you're confident and comfortable within yourself, you can start thinking, oh, they may be busy or there may be something else going on, rather than automatically straight away, you know, sinking into that feeling of that negative, you know, thought of, I wonder what they're doing, or they don't like me anymore, they don't care about me, this and this. And what happens there is all of a sudden you start off with one negative emotion, but then it slowly gets into something so big. And then when you speak to the person, they might say, oh, I just had a meeting, so therefore I couldn't answer your last question. And then all of a sudden you think, I just made something so tiny into something so big. Yeah. And that's what can change people's states so quickly. Yeah. And it's almost not even giving the other person a chance or allowing that person just to be. And this is where the compassion comes in, not just for yourself, but for the other person, and understanding that everybody's got their own stuff going on.
Yeah, so you know when you've gone into the opposite state of love, because the moment you feel offended, or you've gone into comparison, or you've gone into anger or hurt or jealousy, then you know you've gone into that state, and that state is telling you that's not your true higher self. That is just a program playing out, and that program is like a recording, something recorded when we're young. That example, a child already believed that if I don't get hugged, that means they don't love me. That's because they believe anything. So whatever you believe is what you get throughout your life. So if you believe, people out there who do not acknowledge me, I can't trust them. That's just a belief. That's a simple one. So whatever you believe, you get. And so that's when so how do you overcome this? And we discussed that as well the other time when we were talking about this, that the moment you feel any of those opposite of love, like you're feeling offended, then you quickly catch yourself saying, I just got myself out of the God's higher vibration state, and my program just kicked in. And that's where you say, well, my true self, the higher state, never feels offended, because the higher state of the God self, it's omnipresent, it's everything. So how can it feel offended? It has no hate, it has no anger.
It has no fear.
It has no fear. So we just allowed ourselves the program to stop playing out. And it's so wonderful when you keep doing this, you can catch yourself, and then you become the observer state.
I mean, I was just going to go back to, when we were children, our parents probably came from abroad, and now parents get a lot of support as to how to treat their children, how to give them time. But I feel like a lot of our generation have got some kind of, they feel hurt and angry because their parents didn't give them the attention that I know my children would give their children. But why is that? It's because we keep evolving. And it's also about accepting that when our parents came to this country, they were in survival mode because they were just trying to find somewhere for us to live, food, shelter, you know, all the things that we have to have when we've just like kind of come from a foreign country.
Yeah.
And that's where they would have been coming from, and that's where we've got to understand that we need to forgive and just say it was okay. They did the best that they could in their time. And I think, you know, holding on to that and thinking, well, I don't even remember. And this is about me. I remember my mom not hugging me the way I would hug my children. And that was only because she was just busy doing so much of the stuff in order just to keep the house running. And it wasn't because she didn't want to. It was just the way she was in survival mode. And I think a lot of parents, I mean, if you think about your childhood, and most people, if you think about their parents, most parents will say, well, I worked 12 hours, I was at the factory, I was looking after the kids, and they knew nothing about nothing because, you know, they were literally picked out of their foreign country and they were just landed in the UK somewhere. So they just had to survive.
So then that's what we call when we actually survival mode, because we're living in a fear-based state. So if you think about when we did the shows on chakras, the lowest, the first chakra, the root chakra, that's all about trying to get all our materialistic needs met. And we need the materialistic needs like the roof over your head, the water, the food, you know, the money. So that's all fear-based energy. The lower chakra is also connected to the fear, and fear is connected to this world. And this is where we constantly in the fight or flight freeze mode. So that's when we find ourselves not allowing ourselves to be in the higher state, in the God state, in the higher chakras. But then that was part of the experience that soul, the person had, in order just to survive in this human form, just to get our materialistic needs met.
And then there's no blame there. There should be no blame, because, you know, as children, we can just blame our parents and say, well, they never nurtured us, they never really cared about us. It wasn't that they never cared, but they were in that state of survival. But over the generations, you can see that now, you know, because of the hardships that they went through, we are now so much more comfortable, so we can give that time, energy, love, attention to our children, and then it just gets better and better.
Yeah, and it's the primal way of existing on this planet, because we're hardwired, because there's an animal instinct, as you know, to the brain stem is on survival mode, that, you know, we just that part of the brain that wants to keep us alive. You know, so to keep us alive, I haven't got time to think about all the, you know, the
niceties. The niceties
so I just got to
life.
make sure there's food, there's water for us, there's shelter, there's clothes, you know, and we're warm. So it just wants to focus on that. But in doing that, then we do find that's where we get the programs kicked in, when we start thinking, a young child thinking, oh, they haven't got love for me. Where's the love gone? Because the lower chakra is all about fear, and that's the opposite of love, and we're not experiencing the love as much then. And that's when a young child thinks, oh, it grows up thinking love is something that doesn't exist here. You know, this is talking about the human way of what is love.
But you know, I mean, I'm just going to talk about personal experience where I was going through some difficult times, and I know we've discussed this. I mean, the God state, as Dav has explained it, is in every experience. Any experience and every experience is the God state. But then I like to think that because my life is so busy externally, I want to feel more of the God state. And for me, the God state is to be able to, well, choose to come out of life and just meditate, and to be selfish and just think, I don't want to be involved in the external world. I want to pay attention to myself, you know, where there's peace, there's quiet. And for me, that's the bliss. But, you know, you've got a different way of explaining it. And I love that I do that, because that's the only way I feel like I can feel like I'm completely such a higher consciousness, rather than just the day-to-day stuff of what I do, which I still enjoy, but not to the same extent.
But I just feel like I've connected more with God's state when I'm in that lower place, because when in that lower place where you feel in the depth of that pain, but underneath that pain is this even more powerful depth of love. So once we allow ourselves to connect through that pain, like going through forgiveness, self-love, self-compassion, unconditional love, that's when we suddenly go, whew, we go on the top, we've had a growth. So we've had a sudden upgrade and that growth, And that's when we experience that sudden, oh my God, this life is so beautiful. All of a sudden, amazing things start happening. We start seeing all these magical, synchronicities and all these things. Manifestation starts happening quickly. We start attracting things. Oh, Jesus, you saw Jessica. Next minute, oh my God, it's really happening. I only thought about it the other day. Now it's here.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you suddenly experience that depth of pain, and we allow ourselves to grow from it and change from it. And then we get this sudden rise of love. And that's just so we've fallen in love, but we've actually risen in love. And that's where we experience this magical cosmic energy of love.
And this is where I'm just thinking by what you've just said, that when we choose to remain stuck, then we don't experience that.
Yeah.
But as soon as we get to the point of acceptance, self-love, self-compassion, and understanding the real reason behind why that happened to you, again, that's where you would go whoosh, and feel that sense of, oh my God,
elation,
yeah,
isn't it?
elation.
And it's through the pain. So I would say I connect more with God's state, connect more with God through my challenges. And like another word, I would say, who's your guru? I think my challenges and my pain have been my guru. They've been teaching me how to expand and grow and be in that God state. And the God state keeps growing and growing and growing, but not while I was there. It's when I hit rock bottom. That's where I experienced the massive bliss.
Yeah, and what we've always got to remember is the external, where we want to experience love from, and that's completely fine, that is always going to be temporary. It's never going to be this permanent feeling of love. And everything that's external, and the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji always talks about this, about not to be attached to the outside world, because it's just like sand. It's always just going to go through your hands. But constantly as human beings, we feel that that's where we're going to get the love from, from buying, bigger houses or cars or whatever it is that, you enjoy buying, and you're constantly chasing after that. But the real God state is where it's like saying, be still, and that's where you are, being that omnipresent, that infinite being that you are.
Yeah, attachment is a big one more, Hannah.
Yeah.
That we're constantly seeking for that.
It's validation, isn't it?
It's like we're holding on to this pen. I don't want to lose this pen. And one day we hold it tighter and tighter and tighter.
Yeah.
But look how much pain I'm suffering, inflicting on myself by holding it. And we look, okay, 1 second, but imagine holding this for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Your hands, you'll be crippled, Hannah. So that's what attachment does. It does cripple you, and you get paralyzed. And so attachment just, it's like you're holding on to a bird, and just let it go.
And I mean, another example of external validation is where, for love, and which makes you kind of feel good about things, but it's always going to be temporary, is like social media. Any kind of social media where someone kind of interacts or give you a like or something like that, you might think, oh wow, somebody's taking notice of me. We all do it, and there's nothing wrong with doing it, but it's where you become dependent on it, and you kind of imagine that is who you are, when we have to keep saying you have to go within. You are this omnipresent, but you have to be still to experience that, but as well as doing everything that you're saying.
Yeah, and I think meditation, it's just a way of, you want to be in that God state as well, so you want to just, like we shut our eyes, we're letting go of these 5 sensories now, and to go into the deeper sensory, the 6th sensory in there. And the beautiful part of that is really just to connect with that stillness. And to slow our thoughts down, because our thoughts are just like passing clouds. We get so attached to our thoughts and put so much meaning into it, and we start identifying with it and suffering from it, but those thoughts are not even real.
Not real,
Because what is real, what is truth, is the eternal love state that knows no end, no beginning. Thoughts just come and go, but when we get attached to them, that's when we allow ourselves to stop growing and expanding. So the meditation for me is, I think it's just a way of constantly focusing on what am I thinking about, what am I giving my attention to, because whenever I'm doing that, I'm allowing myself to grow, attract that sort of situation into my life. So, and also I think another thing experience I remember about what is the love state? Love state with this, like you said, if it's not emotion, it has to be something just still and nothingness.
Yeah.
The nothingness, people are afraid of darkness, but in that darkness and nothingness, well, nirpo, nirvay, there's no fear, there's no hatred. It's just that stillness where there's no thought, where there is just nothing happening. But that's where another virtue of God is peace. Peace means there's nothing happening, there's no emotion, nothing. And that nothingness is also a state of God. And I had a quick experience of that. So like when I gave birth to my daughter, I remember the moment I gave birth to her, just before she took her first breath, it's just that suddenly everything just stopped. I mean, like time had stopped. And there's no noise, nothing. It happened very like a split second. And I didn't recognize it although as much. And then when my mum passed away, the moment she took her last breath, the same thing happened. And that's when I recognized, oh God, I felt this before. And I remembered, although I gave birth to my daughter just before she took her first breath, and my mum took her last breath, that same stillness when nothing's happening, there's no time, concept of time. That place, that stillness, that's where I think is that state, God's state.
And this is exactly the reason why I love meditating, because it takes me out of my busy life.
Yeah.
And we talked about shiny things, about how women especially love shiny things. You can interpret that however you like. We love collecting and getting this and improving that and stuff like that. But through meditation, there is nothing that you want, there's nothing that you need, there are no desires, there's no expectations. So you've almost gone within yourself and you just something that's breathing. Yeah. And to get into that state, it takes practice, time and some effort. But for me, that's bliss, just going within yourself. And I feel that through doing that on a regular basis, as often as I can, that it just changes the way I feel about other people. And we've always said this, that we're all one. So there is nothing out there. When you're in that state of bliss, for me, that's like that, my completely higher consciousness. And it's exactly what you've just described as those moments of the birth and the death. Yeah. It's that place of that no time, nothing exists there, but it's a case of wanting to be there. And I think it's great because life is just so busy that we deserve to spend that much time where we don't feel attached to all the external things that are going on. And also there's no suffering because all of a sudden you haven't got to think about what's going on with what somebody said or somebody leaving this world. You can kind of just be. Yeah. And it's that's like, what I feel.
And when we do start doing let's say you do the meditation just on breathing, inhaling and exhaling, the more you do that, you get that same experience I had with my daughter, that just between that inhale and exhale, that's when you experience that stillness. That's where the Rab, the Nadarshan on there, there's this split thing that happens just before the inhale and exhale. So the more you do that, people actually start experiencing that stillness.
Yeah. So we're just going to, we really hope you've enjoyed that part of our program, but just to switch it up a little bit, what's your favourite love story?
Actually, it's my Choti Hunde, it's like watching that movie Mirabai.
I am going to watch that. I haven't watched it, but it's with Hema Malini.
That's
isn't
right.
It?
Yeah.
And who else?
Vinod Khanna. I think he is playing her husband. He was the king Maharaja.
Okay, so that's a film that you've got to watch.
Yeah. What about yours?
Mine is The Sound of Music.
Why is that?
I just love the whole story. I love the fact that she was in this monastery, thought she wanted to be a nun, and on all the God state and all those kind of things. And then she was pulled out of that, and then she had to live with a family that got no mother. So she experienced love in a completely different way. Yeah. So I think that's a really good example of what we're talking about.
It is, yeah. It's like Mirabai, she or Choti Hunde, she always believed that she's already married. She's married to Ram, Krishna. So when she had to get married to the king, she just couldn't understand how to deal with a situation like that. And obviously the king, he felt hurt, he felt upset that she wouldn't go into a relationship with him. But you got to watch the movie.
Yeah, I am.
But it's how she experienced love, that Choti Hunde. She feels that her Rab was her beloved, her partner, her husband. And it's such a beautiful story. You have to watch it. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to watching that. So we really, really hope you've enjoyed our programme, and we are going to continue with this subject of love, because like we said, we don't feel like we can talk about it endlessly, but we hope we've given you some nuggets of different ways to experience love, or to actually understand it on a much, much deeper level. So
So I think on the next episode, I think we're going to discuss, can you really love everyone?
Yeah. So thank you so much, and we hope you've enjoyed our programme.
See you next week, Friday.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.